Okay, hello everyone. I hope I am audible, and we'll just take a couple of minutes for other folks to kind of join in. Okay. So I just hi Arnas. So if you're able to hear me, just confirm that you're able to hear me and able to see me with a comment. I think that will be great. Just a confirmation. Hi Srilakshmi. Oh, awesome. Great. Cool. Okay, so we'll give it some time for other folks to kind of join in, whoever wants to join in, and then we'll get started. Hello. Okay, I've also kept a mobile device beside me just to check, like, what is the lag between the actual versus the stream. Look like there's a minimal lag, but it's okay. It's adjustable. So we'll just wait for another minute, and irrespective of how many people join in, we'll get started. Okay, I also want to kind of confirm about, hey Ajay, hey, I just want to confirm that my screen sharing works. I'm just sharing my screen right now. Need a confirmation that you're able to see the screen as well. So if one of you can just confirm. All right. Okay, cool. So I think it's time that we get started. Let others kind of join in the meantime. So thank you everyone for joining in. Um, and this is something that I thought, okay, thought of doing for a long time, but somehow was not picking up the right time and right mood to do this. But as we all know that Hacktoberfest is around the corner, it's actually started. Registration has already started. Um, and I thought this is the right time that we can actually start talking about open source, do some kind of experience sharing with all of you, and whatever I know so far exploring this. It's a very sweet field of open source, and giving you all my knowledge that I have, so that from here on, if you want to kind of explore, you can actually explore. And if you're already exploring, it will be really great. I'm sure that with some of the maybe some of the additional pointers from my side. Okay, so I have two things in my agenda. One, the thing that what I'll be covering is today is I'm trying to share my screen again. I'm not sure if it is very small for you to read, but I'll try to kind of read it out for you. Not a problem. So what I'm going to cover is, like, I'm going to cover, like, what is open source in general. Then I'm going to cover, like, what exactly open source contribution mean, why to contribute at all, and then how to get started with open source. What are the prerequisites that you might need for open source thing? What are the do's and don'ts that you need to keep in mind? Um, and you might be participating in open source not only as a contributor but also as a maintainer. So I'll also talk about the maintenance checklist. And believe me, the Hacktoberfest is probably a great time for you to also think through and learn through, like, how you also can maintain open source projects and build a community around it. So we'll talk about that thing. We won't go away without talking about Hacktoberfest, and also we'll talk about, like, what's next. That's basically what I wanted to kind of screen share. Rest of the time I'll be mostly talking, and I'll be sharing few resources from web browser at a later point of time. Okay, so let's get started with, like, what is open source in general. I'm sure that most of you kind of, if you have not contributed even, you have an idea, like, from the term itself. Open source means the source is open. So what exactly it means? So if you have a project or a product, the product or project is always backed by a source code, or a documentation or something that produces the end output and goes to your end user, right? That's what the purpose of a project or a product. Now, the source code of that particular project or that product, if it is open for everyone to view, which they can look into, they are going to modify, they are going to enhance, or they're going to distribute. If it is open for all these four, like to view, modify, enhance, or distribute, we will call that particular source code as open source. This is the definition. And if that source code belong to a project, we'll call that project as open source project. And ultimately, when the project gets built and the final output comes out, we'll call that as an open source product or open source software. That's the very basic definition. There is no rocket science in that, actually. Okay, so it means that if, as an individual, I'm interested to look into some project source code, and I can actually modify that code, I can actually enhance that code, and at some point of time, whatever I have enhanced to it, that gets to end customer in some kind of distribution mode, I'm actually working on an open source project. Okay. Another way of thinking is there is a source code, and the maintainers of the particular project is allowing me to make a actually copy of the code in some way, and then I put my own feature and distribute that particular code, the enhanced code, completely in parallel with the project that currently existing, from where I have actually cloned or forked or things like that. That is another way that I can actually go about. But how am I going to distribute? It all depends on the various kind of licensing mechanism. Some licenses are very open for distribution. Some licenses are having certain restrictions, and there are varieties of license exist. You would have heard about MIT, Apache 2.0, BSD. There are various kind of licenses are existing, and you can actually decide, like, based on the nature of your project that you are maintaining, on nature of the project that somebody is maintaining, you are trying to contribute to what extent the distribution is possible. Looking into those licensing definition, I'll show you, like, on a project like where to look into all those things. So that's about open source. Now, second thing is, like, we want to talk about open source contribution. I think this is where most of the confusion comes, specifically people who just getting started or want to kind of understand, hey, what exactly, how am I going to contribute? What exactly it means? I think what you need to think through that, open source contribution means is, of course, you can go ahead, modify the source code to fix a bug, enhance a feature, whatever it is possible for you. But that contribution is not limited to just source code modification. That is one thing we all need to understand. A project, if you see, like, holistically, a project, if you see, a project is not just about the source code. A project, for the end customer to realize, like, what they are getting as an end product, it has a lot of other folds. For example, it has the development, it has testing, it has documentation, it has marketing, it has content, it has blogs, it has videos, it has probably various different kind of things that a particular project is associated with it. Now, if this is an open source project, you can play a role in all these circles. It's not only about code. So it means that you are somebody who may not know PHP and the project is in PHP, but what you know very well is that documentation is having some kind of issue. You can actually go ahead and kind of fix that thing in the documentation. You actually making a contribution to that particular project, even without knowing, what is this particular project technically, capable of. You are knowing the technologies. Without knowing the technology stack, you can still go ahead and do contribution to that particular project. You can write content about it, right? You must be seeing there are a lot of, if you're a content creator, there are a lot of open source projects reach out to few people, few content creators, the writers, that, hey, can you write content for my project? And that particular content goes really wild and get a lot of visibility to that open source project, at the end of the day. So that is another way that you can actually contribute to. See, so not only about the source code, you can actually change documentation, you can raise issues as a giving a feedback to the open source project. There might be a project that you are using day in, day out. If any web developers are here, I'm sure that they are. You are using React, you're using Angular, you're using Vue. All these things are open source, guys. So they are there, and if you think that there are certain things that you can actually fix, there are certain things you can enhance. Maybe a tiny library that you are using for that spinner or the loader. There's a tiny library, it's open source, somewhere it's an NPM. You want to kind of go ahead and contribute to and enhance it. Great, it's a great opportunity for you to kind of go ahead and start doing that, right? So The contributions can be from all the folds. You can actually provide feedback. You can actually talk about it. You can become an advocate. So from all the perspective, the contribution is extremely valuable. And one thing just want to kind of point out here, if you are a beginner to the open source world, don't be discouraged by thinking that the contribution is very small. Your first contribution is very small, or your first contribution is something you think that is so trivial, that anybody can do. It's not the right mindset to have. Why? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that small contribution has to reach somewhere at the end. And for that to reach, it has to pass through various processes, which is same for a mammoth code changes also. What I mean by that, the small changes also has to go through code review process. It also has to get merged. Then the build has to be tested, and then through some CI/CD process, it has to be deployed, and then the end customer realize that that's particular small change. So no change is small on the open source world. Specifically, your first contribution is never small. You should actually remember like probably your first love, and you should never forget your first contribution to open source. Okay, so that is one thing that I want to call out. Okay, the next thing I want to move towards is like why contribute? Like what is for me if I contribute? Okay, I understand for the end project, end product is valuable, but what exactly for me? I think I think is like after making several contributions and maintaining some of the open source projects already, is like at the end of the day it's a great satisfaction. For example, I have told about an npm or a framework that you are using day in day out, and that there is a bug in that framework that is probably lying somewhere, nobody's picking up, and it's something bothering you, and you want to go ahead and fix it. The satisfaction that you get, like is somebody's code looking into it, and then do this one, get it done completely, and that particular satisfaction is pretty good. Okay, that's the first. I'm going through the order that I feel which kicks me to do the open source contribution. So that satisfaction is the first thing. Second thing is about understanding the entire open source ecosystem. So when you put your first contribution to open source, you actually go through the path of contributing end to end. As I told that you have to open an issue. So first time, if you have never done, like how to open an issue on GitHub, on GitLab, this is the first time you're doing, is your learning curve. And then you have to create a branch. Okay, before that, you have to fork the repo. If you have never done forking, this is your chance to learn forking, like how to sync my forked repo with my upstream repo, then how to kind of push my code and then create a branch, then finally do a pull request. So all the technical part is done. Now your soft skill come into picture. Once a pull request is created, the maintainer of the project or the code reviewer is giving comments left and right. How do you deal with it? How you be grounded, how you be modest, how responsible you are. I kind of taking it to the end goal, because you are the person who has put a lot of effort into it, and you don't want that to get wasted. You want that to kind of get merged at the end of the day. So how you work back and forth with different people involved in that particular pull request, and finally see like once this thing is getting merged, finally see that this thing is alive. So this entire process is basically something very, very worth learning. And if somebody is learning this first time through doing an open source contribution, nothing like it, because after that you contribute to any other project, or you join an organization which follows similar kind of development processes, you're already there because you have learned about it. So this is my second kicking point. The third thing is about upskilling myself. So why? Because if you're working in an organization, or if you're learning in certain kind of track, you mostly will be in that particular track. So for example, if I'm working in an organization, I'm working on a technology which is not very well known in the market, but my company demands me to do it because that is what they paid me for. So what I can do, I have two alternatives. Is like I can leave my job and join another company which kind of gives me the work that I'm looking for. But what is the guarantee that after 3 months or 6 months, the case won't be the same, right? Will I switch again? Will I switch again? Will I switch again? Maybe I will. That's probably one of the way to go. But there is an alternate ways to kind of look into this. The alternate ways to look into this is like to show the world that what we are capable of, and if there is a kind of upskilling required on certain kind of technology, I can always go to a relevant open source project. I can learn this thing theoretically and kind of start picking up certain issues, picking up certain feature, and then start implementing it. Get guidance from people, get mentoring from people, get reviews from people, and finally is get merged. And that contribution, whatever the contribution comes, I talk about it. And the fourth point comes is with that, like I can actually make my resume stronger, I can make my portfolio stronger, I can make my contribution to all over the world, coming back to my even own organization, that I made this particular contribution on this technology, and so I'm more capable, right? So that is another one. And then last but not the least is like, once you start contributing and start understanding, like how the ecosystem works, it will eventually trigger you to be a maintainer, like to start an open source project and to kind of be part of a community, start doing the networking. So these are pretty important things. So today, if you see, there are multiple open source projects, multiple communities around that, and some of the communities are really excellent. They're doing really good job in terms of mentoring people, showing them the right path, not only about open source but with the related technologies. So that's another advantage, that's another grand advantage that I see over there. So that's my point about like why contribute. Okay. Before I get to how to get started, I just want to kind of check on the chat if there is any question. Otherwise, I'll go over there. So I'm just checking the chat. Okay, there is a question on the React Play project. Yeah, I think Nirban already answered that, so that's good. So guys, please feel free to ask questions, because that will be really great. I will be able to kind of clarify. And I have actually opened a vote. I'm not sure if all of you voted that. So if you have voted that, yes, I have contributed to open source. So please also put forward your points. That will be useful as well. Okay, so okay, I'll come to that. How do you guard against open source spamming? I'll come to that when I'm talking about Hacktoberfest and that phase of thing, because that is where it is kind of more related. Okay, so how to get started? Of course, if you know a project already, it is very straightforward. You kind of go ahead and kind of start with that project immediately. But if you don't know like where to start with, there are few options available that you can explore. Okay, so I will show few websites where you can actually go and explore things. So let me just go ahead and pull that. I'm showing my screen again. I hope that people are able to see my screen. Okay, so if it is too small, I'm going to make it big. Okay, so the first thing that kind of I go or usually look into is GitHub Explore. So if you go to github.com/explore, basically it finds the repository based on your interest area. So if you have your own GitHub, you should have your GitHub account first. I would always recommend that create a profile. Create a profile with proper picture, your description, what you do, and things like that. So once you have that, and you kind of start doing some projects over there, you tag your projects with technologies and things like that. So based on that, GitHub Explore actually bring you certain projects that you can look into, and it may be something that you will be okay, little more zoom, that you will be able to kind of contribute to, because it's related to the technology that you often visit on GitHub, related to things that you mostly work on things, right? So all these projects you can actually go ahead and start looking into. These source are open, so you can actually go ahead and start seeing like what exactly matches your interest and get started from that. That's the first thing that I want to kind of point out. Second thing, I want you to go to Contributor Ninja. So if you know about this particular site, it's the site is like the look and feel. Don't focus on that, but it has kind of good amount of information. For example, if you want to kind of contribute to a PHP open source project, there's a PHP stuff, JavaScript one, HTML one, Rust, things like that. I will share all this link once this video gets published in the comment section of it, so you can find it. Anyways, then the next one, I'll go to the first contributor. This is my favorite, this one and the next one. So here you can search thing very easily, and you can actually figure it out, like which language and things like that. You can filter on React, say JavaScript, Next.js, Node.js. So depending on various kind of technologies, you can pull the open source project and then start looking into like, okay, what are the open issues are there? Can I contribute to anything? If not, let me try out this particular project. Okay, I think that this is something I can improve. Let me file an issue and let me start working on it. So this is the life cycle. This is the flow that usually I take and I recommend. So you can actually start with that. So this is the third one. This is another one. It's pretty good. It's called Code Triage. So if you see on the Code Triage, you have various, again, the categorizations available. And also another thing is like it also annotates like, whether it is a, once you log in, whether it is a documentation issue or it's a source code issue, so that it's easy for you to kind of get into like what you're looking for. The next one is up for grabs, the another one. There are many actually. The up for grabs is another one where you can actually look into, by name, if you know, then or by label, so say, for example, in GitHub, when I create an issue, if it is kind of easy for someone to pick up, I usually put a label like, good first issue. So you can actually search by good first issue, like what are the good first issue means beginner friendly. So you can find out if you're the first time contributor, maybe good first issue is a good thing to kind of get started with. You can actually search by level and it gives you all the filter lists. And again, same process, go into that, look into the issue list, look into the project and see how you can contribute. This one is not a project list as such, Open Source Friday, but what exactly it is basically it's a motivation. Like, every Friday, if you do some kind of contribution, it kind of start appearing over here. And you can build your timeline, like what are the contributions that you actually make. So every Friday, every week, you can make some contributions and, it kind of grows from there. Everybody knows about Free Code Camp. I'm sure I don't have to introduce that. So Free Code Camp has an open source guide as such. So there are a lot of information that you can actually pick up and you can actually learn from that. So these are the resources that I usually followed when I started kind of exploring what open source is, and I found out few projects to contribute to, started my contributions and things like that. Okay, there is a question from Rohit. As a beginner, can I learn from them? Yes, you can actually. So the learning is multifold. Like, so learning is not about the technology. Technology definitely you can learn. Okay, and I will say that think big. Think about looking into the React source code. Think about looking into, if you're an Angular guy, like Angular source code. Like, that is one great learning that you can do. The reading by source code in your life, you will definitely do reading by source code and learning from that, right? So that is one way that you can actually learn. Second way, like when you are contributing, you are definitely either building some feature or fixing some bugs. I'm talking about the code contribution for the moment. You are definitely learning, because what is happening is, like, even if you don't know, for example, it's a Next.js project, you don't know much about Next.js, you go to nextjs.com, just get that, learn Next.js. There is a beautiful tutorial, takes hardly 2 hours for you to complete. If you have some React and JavaScript background, come back to this particular project and you have the hands-on experience with Next.js. So that's the learning curve that you can meet with open source project. Yeah, I'll definitely share these links of the site, as I told, like in the comment section of this video. Once the video get published, you will get all these links, with you. Okay, so that kind of says, like, how you can get started. There are various ways you can actually go for one from their pickup, search for things, get into the project, explore the project, look into the issue list. That's it. You actually get started. That's what I'll say. Okay. Again, if there is a documentation issue, probably it's the easiest one to fix, provided it is not very complex grammatical things you will be fixing. But really don't feel like it's very trivial. As I told you, it's like the learning curve is important, not the kind of issues you're fixing to start with, right? Okay, so the next thing that I want to cover over here after how to get started is prerequisite. I'm going to talk about few prerequisite before I go to do's and don'ts. Okay, so some of the prerequisites for open source world is, one is definitely Git. Like, you need to know the Git fundamentally, because all the project artifacts, source code, documentation today is managed with a version control system. So it means that you need to know Git so that you become more proficient about managing it by yourself. Okay. Second thing is, like, you need to know a repository system, for example, Git or GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or things like that, right? So you need to know that. So these two are technical things. I would say that you need to have some idea, Git basics and GitHub basics. The third thing, or from this onwards, whatever I'm going to talk about, nothing technical about it. So all are soft skill as a prerequisite. So you need to be very curious about things. For example, why this curiosity required? Because if you want to search which repo I can actually contribute to, that's where the curiosity starts. And okay, is this something that I'll be able to kind of do it, looking into the issue? That's what your curiosity in. So you have to have that curious mind to look into. And once you kind of build your mind initially, it will flow. It is a very natural progression. It will flow. Second thing would be like, few things I've already touched base. It's like, be bit humble, grounded, because it's a community. You are not meeting people physically day by day. You are meeting people virtually, and you don't know most of them, right? So you don't know, like, certain language that we speak, certain language that we speak orally, that might not go very well with somebody other side. So when we are, responding on an issue, or what, responding on a pull request, just be polite, be grounded. People will be more responsive to you. That is the real hack, actually. The more, arrogant somebody is, more, brutal somebody is, they have a lesser chance of getting any response back from people, even they're seeking some help. So this is very important, actually, that part. And then the thing would be like, you be responsive. So for example, you have taken an issue, and definitely the maintainer is counting on you that Mr. or Mrs. XYZ will kind of do it and come back. Last 2 months you don't have any update on that issue, you have not made any update on that issue, so the maintainer doesn't know, like, are you really working on it, or should I assign this to somebody? There are some automated process through which we can actually kind of take that one, or close the PR if it is kind of for a long time, it is lying there. There are certain open source tools through which we can do that. But in general, if you are not working on something, or if you're working on something, what is your progress? It is always good to kind of provide comment into your pull request or your issues, so that it is visible to everyone. I would say that that is something that you need to learn, as a definite prerequisites. So these are the things, like two technical things. Rest of the things are more about, soft skill and how you actually go about it, right? So that is there. I have also covered a part of kind of do's and don'ts, but there are a few things that I want to kind of cover. So one do is definitely, once you contribute to your open source project, socialize it. Okay, you should always socialize your work. You should be proud about what you do, irrespective of how big or how trivial it is. And this is very applicable for the open source world also, because more you socialize this, you will see like more opportunities are coming towards you. I know people who mentioned to me that they got job just because of their contribution to open source. Okay, I'm not taking name, but I know that there are people like that, because they mentioned in the resume, and that one point actually really got to the recruiter, and actually they were offered job. So you don't know, like, what you are doing, if you're actually making it public, what kind of positive impact that it can bring. So please do that. That is one thing. Second thing is about, there are a few things that, hygiene wise is very important in an open source project. So if you are taken, say, 4 issues on your plate, like, you want to make sure that you are working on all these 4 issues, make sure that you are responsible to respond to all those 4 in what manner that they are coming. Those 4 or 5 or things like that, whatever you are taking. It is not good to kind of hold too many, because there are other people also maybe seeking to get some of the issues to work on. They might approach to you saying that, hey, have you started working on it? I am interested to take it up. If you're not working on that particular point of time, you can always collaborate, or you can actually give that, so that the other person kind of pick it up. So it is not very good idea to kind of hold many for long, in this kind of environment, right? And then other thing would be is like, look for an opportunity for either you mentor someone, if you have that ability, or if you're interested to do that. It's a good thing to kind of mentor someone based on what kind of skills and things like that particular project needs. At the same time, look for an opportunity to get mentored. Now this part is a bit tricky, and that is why you need to look for the communities, whether the open source project is having a community around it. Yeah, and how is the community, and is this community something which is like, is good, it's kind of growing, people are responsible, they are responsive, things like that you can gauge. Most of the communities today exist mostly on, say, Discord, Slack, or maybe Twitter to some extent. So you can actually gauge by being part of it, like, how the community is and what is your learning opportunity from there, what is your mentoring opportunity from there. So that's something that you need to look for. So those are actually do's and don'ts that I thought, okay, I'll be covering and you should keep in mind. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about from the maintainer's point of view. But before that, I want to look into the questions and see whether anybody have any questions. As a beginner, can I learn? I've answered that. Could you make a new CSS series for newbies, professionally building or landing pages for dashboard? Yeah, so that's a request. Yeah, definitely. We'll try something. I'll take that request. I'll note that down. We'll try something around that. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is called maintenance checklist. But one thing is, like, before that, I think many people ask me, like, where are those? Okay, you told me that, from GitHub Explore or Code Ninja, you can actually get into the project and start contributing. But hey, where are those communities? Where is the open source community that I can be part with and I can learn from that? So there are various ways you can actually target this. One way is from the project to find the community. So you search based on those criteria, get into a project, see the project is associated with the community, you be part of it. Other way that you can go ahead with is, like, there are various communities already there. They're a very established community. So let me show some of them to you. Okay, add to stream. So this page, I'll share again this one as well. Okay, so it actually lists down some of the communities which are very, very well known. And like, you have React communities, you have Drupal communities, you have Red Hat communities, you have Eclipse communities, you have Genome, Linux communities, the various different communities that are there. So if this interests you, you can always look into, take part, and see, like, how this particular community work and actually take from there. Don't be so overwhelmed looking into some of these big names, because though the names are kind of very big, very established, but once you kind of get into some of this community, their Discord channel, they are very, very helpful. That is where you have a higher chance of finding mentors, because it's not run by one or two individuals. There are various people who actually helps running this. So this is another page where I can actually, with that one, I'll be sharing with you, when I share other links as well. Okay, now let's get back to maintenance checklist, and I'll bring something for you. So I'm assuming that most of you are aware of what GitHub is and have kind of basic familiarity with, working with GitHub and things like that. But if you don't have, this is something that you should consider learning, because it's really awesome. Okay, so let me show a few things over here. So first I'll go to my profile, my GitHub profile. Okay, this is my GitHub profile. So I would first request you that if you don't have a good profile on your GitHub, please create one. It just takes a couple of hours, where you can highlight, like, your image, what you do, who you are, your social handles, things like that. And then, more about your project. And there are various things that you can actually do on your profile. This can become your resume, actually. So you can do various things. Now, if you are a maintainer of a project, you have to make sure that you do certain checks and balances, so that other people as a contributor get attracted to your repository, and your repository also have higher chance for getting qualified whether GitHub Explore or somebody is kind of pulling things right in that list. Your repository also get a chance to kind of land there. So I'll go to maybe any of the example one. Let me go to maybe React Play, because that's probably one of the ideal one right now. So I'll go to this React Play. This is another open source project. So as a project creator on GitHub, you have to first come to settings tab and set few things. So for example, set a social preview, so that anytime this particular project is getting shared anywhere in social media, you have an image that will carry your properties image. Okay. Then you can enable few items. For example, you enable the sponsorship, because if somebody kind of sponsor you your project, that is always good for you. You also enable discussions, because if you may be a small project, you are not having any footprint on Discord or Slack yet, but you want your community to grow slowly. That is where you actually want to enable these discussions that people can start discussing over there. Okay, then what you do is basically you enable issues, and while you enable issues, you can also set up some template. What do you mean by that? Whenever somebody come to your project and start creating an issue, they already get certain questions well defined, because it's really irritating as a maintainer that you get an issue and say the subject is just says it is breaking. You don't have any clue in the world like what is breaking, right? You don't have anything. So instead of that, you can actually set up a template which actually ask them like certain question. Hey, where is the error? Can you provide a screenshot? Is there any additional context and things like that? So whenever somebody is trying to create a issue, they have to feel those things as well. So you as a maintainer, your life is much easier. So this is what you do. And then you also like here make the things as a kind of public, make sure that everything is public. So this is about your settings, things that you minimally you do. I'll be coming up with another live in few days where I'll be focusing more on Git and GitHub. So that is where I'll be talking more other settings which you need to know, as a contributor, as a maintainer for GitHub. So I'll be talking more settings on that particular time, but not right now. After that, you should go to the Insight tab. This is very important, and from there you go to community standards. So here, usually when you create a repo, all this tick mark won't be tick. Okay. So what you have to do, you have to make sure that all these tick marks are ticked. So for that, you have to do an action. For example, it will ask you to add a README. You click on it, add a README. It will ask you to add a code of conduct file. You click on it and do. Similarly, it will ask you to pick up a license, whether it is MIT or whatever it is based on your interest, you pick it up. You can do an issue template, pull request template, and all these things that you have to fulfill. Why you have to do this? Because when somebody is coming to your project to contribute, and if they don't find a contributing guide, they don't know how to contribute to your project. And what they will do, they will keep guessing. And if they are making mistakes, it is not their mistake. It is your mistake as a maintainer, because we have not guided them enough how to contribute to this project. So you have to make sure that you're writing a contributing guide. I'll show like how does it look. You also have to do a code of conduct, because it's a community. People has to behave properly. Nobody should abuse other and make them feel small. And if this happen, the code of conduct should say like what kind of action the maintainer is going to take. And as a contributor, whoever suffering of this, where they can go, which mail ID, which person they can go to report some of this thing. So it is very important, like for the code of conduct. README is the face of your project. Most of the exit happen from an open source project from the contribution perspective, because the README is not very proper. So people don't know what exactly over there. People don't know what to follow, don't know how to do this setup locally. So all these things are like out of place. You have to make sure that you do a proper README. And then description of the project. Issue template, I have already told. Pull request template is also another thing that you can do. Like when somebody want to create a pull request, they have to minimally say, hey, I have tested this, some kind of check boxes, and then they finally kind of go ahead and create the pull request. So you as a maintainer, as a creator of the project, if you're planning in this Hactoberfest to put a project out, make sure this checklist is done. It should be 100% like this. Now, once you do this, and once you come to your project, you get to see those additional files over here. For example, this is my contributing.md file. This is my code of conduct. And now some of these files are already template based. So once you go to that place, it is already giving you the template. You have to fill up your email ID, something here and things like that, and it will create it for you automatically. The license, once you select MIT, for example, it will automatically get you the MIT license. You just need to fill up certain details over there, like year and all. And then everything is done. The issue template and the pull request template resides over here. This is the pull request template. This is the issue template. And then if you have enabled the sponsoring, your funding is over here. So you don't have to do really anything. It's just you do those checklists, just follow these things. Everything is getting created for you, and everything is getting set up. So it's this particular point of time. If I am coming here and I'm going to issues, trying to create a new issue, for example, see, I've created a template. It is asking like, you want to create a new play over here, or you want to do a platform feature request, or it's a bug? Okay, fine. I'm going to create a feature request, for example. It is asking me, is your feature request related to a problem? Please describe this. So now I'm actually taking the person who is coming here to help me properly, boss. Okay, don't help me in a way where I have to kind of run behind you. That's not, good thing to do. So as a maintainer, this is your checklist. You make sure that you do this whenever you're putting your project, for open source, or putting your project for Hacktoberfest and things like that. A few more words about README. Okay, so README, as I told, is like if the source code is the heart of your project, README is the face of it. Okay, so you have to make sure that you make that face, as much beautiful as possible. So what you do basically over here, you have some of these badges is optional, but it actually give a highlight, like what is the license of this project. I don't have to really run behind, like where exactly it is, how many pull requests are open, issues are open, and things like that that you can do. You introduce your project, you provide the link, like they can actually look into. You add certain control where you thank your stargazers, like who have started this project. You should always thank them, so you can actually do this. And this also kind of buy you probably more stars, because people start appreciating, like you're appreciating back, people are appreciating you. Then you do like how to set up in the project in the local environment. If this piece is missing, people will exit. Okay. Then this is where it says that install blah blah blah, you do all this thing. How do you test, how do you run the test, how do you deploy? If you have to fork it and you have to deploy this one, how are you going to do this, right? So and if you have to contribute, you can actually look into that. And additionally, you can go to contributing guide, you can go to code of conduct. Okay, and if you have any kind of rewarding system, you can also mention that. So React Play has a rewarding system, so we have mentioned that. You ask for support, like if you want a GitHub sponsorship, or you want to buy me a coffee or things like that. And optionally, you can also like highlight your contributors at the bottom, right? So we use like all contributor stuff, so we are actually highlighting all the contributors over here. Apart from that, make sure you provide a description to the project when you create. That comes over here. You provide the website so that somebody can access from here. And this is very important. This qualifies your project for a certain kind of technology, a certain kind of domain when somebody is searching for it. So make sure you annotate it with a proper tag. Okay, you are seeing this Hactoberfest tag. We are going to talk about that very soon. So this is how you actually go about creating your project, your maintainer checklist and things like that. From the maintainer point of view, there are few more things, there are few more nuisances to take care, maybe for a future in-depth maintainer, open source for maintainers life. But I think for now, I think it is, this overall picture sounds good. Okay, so the maintainer checklist is done. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is Hacktoberfest. So let's talk about the Hacktoberfest. Okay, there is a question: how to open a project file like web after deploying or upload projects on Git? I'm not sure if I got this question completely. Are you asking like how to open a project file from GitHub? I'm not sure if I understood that question. Can you just form it? In the meantime, I'll just go to Hacktoberfest stuff. Okay, so what is Hacktoberfest? Hacktoberfest is an event that is organized by DigitalOcean plus few partners. This time, I think Upright and few other folks are there in 2022, where they encourage the entire developer community to contribute to open source. And to bring that encouragement into picture, they also say like, okay, if you make certain amount of valid contributions, you qualify for certain swags. For example, there is a T-shirt, or they will plant a tree on your name. These are all motivations, okay, for the Hacktoberfest. So you can go to hacktoberfest.com, and if you have not registered for Hacktoberfest, I would strongly encourage you, go ahead and click on the start hacking. This will take you to hacktoberfest.com/auth, and there you can actually start registering yourself. That's the first step, to register yourself as a contributor. So that's a great thing that you can do. Once you do that, what it is going to do, it is going to count like how many pull requests that you have created, which is merged by the maintainer of an open source project. Now, this pull request can be in one project, can be across multiple projects. I would strongly recommend to do it across multiple projects, because you have a variety of experience, because a 1 month long event, and it's enough time for you to kind of look around and learn. So once you're done with your 4 contributions, or all the 4 contributions or the 4 merge requests are merged, and those are counted as a valid contributions, and then you are entitled among those 40,000 participants and the maintainers who are supposed to get those goodies and things like that. Okay, but what will happen eventually? These goodies looks very promising on the first year of your Hacktoberfest participation. Believe me, it will happen. Next year also you will feel like, okay, I have to get the goodies, I have to get the t-shirt. But third year or the fourth year onwards, when you actually going next, your mindset will change gradually. You will look for more for contributions, more for making your own open source project, getting contributions from others, making things beautiful and things like that. That will be your end goal. That will be how your mindset will be eventually. That's why this 1 month is very important. If you are new to this, get into it, try to make it successful for you, and try to make sure that you are actually contributing to this one. As a maintainer, somebody asking about the spam. As a maintainer, it is your duty that you look into each of these pull requests to see, like, whether these pull requests are really something great, or really something worthy for your project. If it is not worthy, because that is where your code review come into picture. Somebody, like, I will tell you about some spam pull request example. So I have written a line in my readme.md. This particular project can be deployed using netlify. So this is a sentence. Somebody created a pull request, modified the sentence like, you can deploy this particular project using netlify. It's just like this is something that you need to really consider, like, you want to kind of take it up, for doing this as a change, as a MR or as a PR for your project, or something that you want to kind of consider as a spam, and you kind of say that, hey, you can label it as a spam and kind of exclude that from the picture. So it is actually context to context. That's how you have to go to determine this, and you have to label it. You have to make sure that you're labeling it. Once you label that particular pull request, that pull request won't be counted, and then it is kind of going actually out of picture. So please register, and then come here to the participation thing. In the participation thing, it is very clearly told, like, register, then go over to GitHub. It will take you to the GitHub Explore that I've showed you before. Then have a 4 pull request merge, and the first 40,000 gets this one. So this is like, just go ahead and read these things. So main thing is about registering it, finding a project, and start contributing to it. So that's the best thing that you can do in this month, in the month of October. I would highly encourage you that please start doing it, and do it for your own purpose. Do it for your learning purpose. Okay, the last thing that I want to kind of call out before I'll take a few questions and then in this broadcast. I know it's very late in night. What next? Say you're done with the 4 pull requests already. Don't stop there. Try to go for your 5th one, 6th one, 7th one, whatever it is. If you stop with the 4th one, you are not. It's okay if the 4th one is such a big one that you are not able to do more than that in that month. But nobody stops you to continue in the month of November. And that's the real purpose of Hacktoberfest. It's not only about the October. October is just the start. What you need to do is, like, you have to repeat it in November. You have to enhance it in December. You have to do better in January. Then you have to do your own project in February. Like, that's the timeline that I can actually talk about. So build this as a habit, and do this as a habit. Okay. I'm going to share 15 projects that I'm putting this year, Hacktoberfest. And on all the 15 projects, if there is any contributions, I'm going to mentor the individual for each of those contributions. So this entire October month, and those 15 projects are in various technologies, like starting with JavaScript, React, Next.js. Something is like very specific thing about JavaScript, like a tool that allow you to visualize how asynchronous JavaScript works. So you want some enhancements over there. There are a few npms and things like that. So I'll be writing a thread on my Twitter account maybe in the next couple of days, introducing all those 15 projects where anybody can participate, anybody can actually raise a PR or MR, and I can actually mentor them on that particular topic or the framework or language. So that's pretty much it. So let me get into some of the questions. How to proceed after forking a project to create pull requests? Okay, great question. So if you have never forked a repo in your life, there is a project called fork-me. I'll share that also in this. Go ahead and fork the repo, follow certain instructions, create a pull request, let your pull request get merged, and so what is the cycle of upstream, upstream fork repo, how to kind of sync with the upstream, how to kind of raise a pull request after you make your changes, all the cycle that you learn basically. Okay, so that I'll share. Now, one to come to Anna's question is like, once you fork the repo and you create a pull request, what do? You go to the next issue. Okay, you are done for that. So you go to the next issue. You don't bother the maintainer saying that, hey, merge my pull request, merge my pull request, merge my pull request. The person not going to do that because he or she has a lot of other items in their list to execute. But make sure if it is an open source project which is like forward looking, they will definitely come to your pull request and then definitely take care of with comments or with like change request or things like that. They'll definitely come to it. But for you, until you get a feedback, a change request, your work done there. Next thing that you should do, move to the next issue, raise a pull request, and kind of do for it. So that's your answer. How to update the feature branch or my fork repo with the upstream? Yeah. So first you need to make sure that I'll cover that in detail, Kaushal, in the upcoming live, where I'll be taking specifically for a lot of Git command and GitHub from the open source perspective, like how do you deal with some of this upstream, making it sync with it. So just to make sure that I'm doing a surface level, make sure that you are setting a proper remote from your local. So you might be working on multiple open source projects in Git in Hactoberfest. Okay, and you will face this issue. I can actually guarantee that if you do that. So you have to make sure that it is set to proper remote. And once it's set to proper remote, how you actually get this, always the latest changes from that repo to your branch. How do you actually give that to, the remote branch? How do you do the pull request? I'm going to show that entire cycle, in the next one. So please wait for that. What's a new error on React Play after forking and starting that? Okay, so to answer to that question, there could be any error. I am not sure which error you're talking about. So please go ahead and join Discord. And if you're on Discord, React Play Discord server, there is a need help channel. Post your screenshot of your error. Sham is already on. I'm seeing he is the kind of prolific contributor from React Play. So he or any of us will get into it and make sure that we are just going to help you out on that. Okay, so I am kind of at the end of it. And I would like to thank each of you for taking your time. I have not really seen how many people joined or things like that, but taking your time and joining and learning, this motivates me to kind of share more. I'll be coming back next with Git and GitHub, mostly from keeping the Hacktoberfest in mind, like how people should contribute. I'm sure that will be a good experience for all of you. Thank you, Sham, for that boost up, super chat. That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And thank you, everyone. Please enjoy your evening and have a great night. And if you have any further questions, guys, please hook me in Twitter. And you can always choose to subscribe this channel if you have not done it, so that it motivates me further to kind of create great content over there. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care. And I'll be back again with the